All right, welcome everybody. It's Travis from the Bootcamp Blueprint here, stepping in for Jono, and I've got an awesome guest who has just told me she's on her first day of a holiday and she's willing to join us. So that's a very big effort. So thank you very much. We've got Nadia Norman, who is based in Gold Coast, Australia, currently in New Zealand on holidays. I believe you're from New Zealand though, naturally.
That is correct.
You're a New Zealander
Yep.
naturally. You
Yep.
don't have much of a New Zealand twang though. You do sound very much like an Aussie.
I do.
But apart from that, Nadia has been in the business for 20-something years. Fitness business coach, speaker internationally, all around the world essentially. Presenter of the year at Filex. A whole heap of big things. Put together a course, basically one of its kind, a women's performance-based course with Fitness Australia. And yeah, a whole heap of good stuff we're going to dive into today with that. So looking forward to talking to Nadia. Nadia, welcome. Thank you for being here. And thank you for giving up day one of your holiday.
My absolute pleasure, Travis. It's an easy thing to do for you guys, so not a problem.
Thank you very much. Well, let's just start with a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in the business and a little bit of your history, basically?
Yeah, right. Okay, I'll keep it pretty brief because this year does mark the 20th year of me being in the industry, which is pretty cool. Thank you. So really I started at Les Mills World of Fitness in New Zealand. I think you're familiar with it because you've been around New Zealand. Way back in the day whilst I was still studying for my physical education degree. And it was actually just by chance that I ended up in the gym. So prior to university, and whilst I was at university, I was an elite hockey player, field hockey player. And it was always my dream to kind of play at like the New Zealand at the Olympics. 2000 Olympics was what I was kind of chasing. And so when I landed at Otago and the training was really starting to step up because I was getting closer and closer to that, a friend of mine said, hey, we should join a gym and also get a personal trainer. So I had been to a gym before as part of my training, but this was the first time I went into a gym specifically to do resistance training for, performance or athletic performance. And I got a trainer and we trained really well together, and she just haphazardly said to me one day, hey, have you ever thought about being a PT? And at the time I was still finishing my degree and I hadn't had any idea about what I was going to do afterwards, because at that time personal training was a very, very new concept. And I kind of thought, I kind of knew it, but I didn't really understand what this thing was. And the only career options I had available to me was to either go and become a PE teacher or to kind of end up working in other spaces like, a gym manager or something like that. So I was like, why not? So I gave up I was supposed to go to Canada for snowboarding for the Christmas holidays, but I decided to stick around and do this 1 week personal training course and get
in depth.
Totally in depth, and just thrown in the deep end to start running my own business at the tender age of like 22, while still finishing my degree.
So just to clarify, the degree was like a high school teacher degree? Is that what you were doing?
No. So it's essentially a sports science degree.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So yeah, I was basically doing sports science. And then, so I kind of completed that. And as I was finishing off, I went ahead and did my postgrad in sports medicine at the same time. And, I just kind of fell into the gym industry for a long time. Then for me, personal training was a just until job. I'm going to do this and just until I get a real job or just until something better comes along, or just until I figure out what I want to do with my life. And I think probably a lot of your listeners are really familiar with that concept. So unfortunately, I didn't take PT that seriously in my younger days because I was always kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Fast forward through to now, and it's a completely different story. Obviously, this is my career. I love this industry, and I think that what is available for trainers these days is just huge, right? You can have a lucrative career these days. And so the current evolution of what I'm doing is, being a business coach to women in fitness specifically, to help them go from overwhelm to business badassery, and to help them be and do and feel legit in the fitness industry. And on the other hand, I'm also have a vested interest in seeing the standard in the way that we work with our female clients improve significantly. And that was the motivation to create the Female Health and Performance Certification, where I'm training trainers specifically in that space. So between the two, between back then and, the start of this decade, I've done lots of different things. I've been a trainer, run multiple businesses, been a cluster manager within Fitness First, so looking at other people's businesses, building their businesses. Like you said, I've done a ton of education. I get to travel the world now and present on lots of different topics, business and female specific stuff. And yeah, it's just been a blast.
I think a couple of things I'll just bounce off there. The just until idea is it's very much something I think when people get into the industry, especially if they're coming in at like a young age,
Yeah.
I suppose the influence on the outer don't take people seriously. Like I'm going to get into the fitness industry. I'm 20 years old. Everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, well, what are you going to do after that? Because
100%.
And doing this, like mentoring people, like as someone who gets into the fitness industry, they're very much doing it by themselves. And usually it's against what everyone else wants them to do, like if they're young, especially. It's against like everyone else is like telling them, yeah, well, what are you going to do after that? That's not a job. That's not a career. That's not so it's a very important message there that it can be a career. And there's so many professionals that we've spoken to and we talk to who've been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years and are just continually evolving and changing, so that's a really important message.
I think it's a mindset thing too, because I would have considered my first 10 years in the industry as being a hobbyist. I didn't take it that seriously, so therefore I didn't take my business that seriously.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, I was serious about my clients and the service I delivered, but I didn't have a clue about business. Like I could have taken my business to a whole new level and I never gave it the opportunity. So I made a ton of mistakes, which is the impetus for doing what I do now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm the same. So John and I worked together for a long time, right? But before I worked with John, I was similar. I was studying to be a teacher. So I'm a primary school teacher as well. So I was studying to be a primary school teacher. Simultaneously, I did my certificates for, my personal training degree. Then I, was still studying, and then I was working in a gym every now and then. Like I was working in a gym while studying, finished my degree. So then I started teaching, and then I was like doing, personal training on the side after teaching. And it wasn't until like same sort of thing much later, after many years, that I sort of went, okay, well, I can sort of do this a bit more now. And that's sort of how it's happened and evolving. And I think that happens actually, I think a lot more for people coming in from a career change. You probably see that anyone comes in from a career change where they've sort of got that 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? And they want to make that, they want to take that step, but they just don't know how.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that in this age, the start of this new decade, the environment and the market awareness around what it is that we do and the services that we offer have changed significantly.
Yeah.
Like when I first started, most of us were trying to educate the market on the product. We are not for rich and famous people.
Yeah.
whereas currently now, I think trainers have to be smarter because the market is super aware. So now the biggest challenge is, how do you stand out in a sea of same? Right. So the market knows, but now we have it's a commodity now, right? PTs are everywhere. So you have to raise the bar to be seen, to be heard.
Yeah. And that's another thing is that raise the bar, continue education. Then the other thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that you're speaking all over the place nowadays. I think that's a really big thing, because having gone to many of these conventions over the last like 3 to 5 years, one thing I've noticed is the amount of women who are beginning to like creep through to these presentations. Because remember when I first went, there was next to none, and that's not that long ago. Like, as I said, like, 3 to 5 years ago, like you go and there'd be 1 or 2 women presenters, and that's it. It was all like just male presenters. And I think the industry, even working in the industry, there were always, whenever you worked at a gym, there was like, oh, we need a female trainer. We want a female trainer, because it's just a very male dominant industry not that long ago. I think that's sort of flipped. I really think maybe it's just the clients that we deal with as well. Like, I just feel as though it's flipped a lot. So like I looked at the Filex list for next year. I think it's more women than men. And
I mean, they have made a concerted effort to put more women on the roster. And I think there's two parts to this. I think for a long time, you know, we've always had women coming into the industry. If you go to any of the RTOs, it's about 50-50 male-female graduates. It's just
yeah,
that
okay.
a lot of males are less likely to, a lot of females are less likely to jump into businesses and stuff like that. And I've heard
Okay.
this so many times. When I was a manager, I was always like, where are these amazing female trainers? They're unicorns. So
Yeah.
a big part of that, I think, is there's more access to female role models now that women can look to, and this is why I do what I do, because I want
Yeah.
to give that platform to help women step up. I think women also, though, are taking it upon themselves to put their hands up and say, hey, include me. Because it's got to go two ways, right? You know, they can open the table and invite women in, but then it's also up to women to step up and go, I'm going to back myself.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I'm seeing more of, women having a backbone to go, yeah, man, I'm going to give this a nudge.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on, because I know we're a broad company, right? But I feel like a lot of the people we're communicating with are women,
Yeah.
and so it's just, and as I said, when I go to these conventions, there's, a large percentage of the audience are women, and now, like I said, more and more you're getting more and more like high level female presenters on a broad range of topics. Like whether it be not just the stereotypical, I suppose, maybe yoga or Pilates or something like that.
Yeah.
They're from, or even women's health. Like you're getting people into like the performance side of things. You're getting people into like data side of things, and all like a whole range of stuff. And it's good because, like you said, you need a different message sometimes. Like I said, I'm a primary school teacher, so I was in an industry where I was one of 30 teachers. I was the only male for like 3 years. It's important to have a balance, and like it's the same in every industry. Like if you can get, like, for whatever reasons, males don't gravitate to primary school teaching, and like I think it's important because we do things differently. How I might communicate to someone and you communicate to someone could be very different, and it's an important thing to have that variety.
And I think that those differences need to be celebrated. I don't think they are sexist or that they're divisive, but it's kind of like, right, well, here's your, males, here's your wheelhouse. Here's what you guys do really well, and this is why we appreciate you. At the same time, it's like, hey, ladies, this is what you do really well, and this is how your messages are spread, and this is why we appreciate you as well. So there's definitely room. This industry is massive. There's more than enough room for people to be stepping up and claiming their spaces in these different leadership roles.
And one of the things I want to talk about in the room idea is, like, everyone, if you find your like audience and your niche that you want to speak to, like there are so many different like little ways that you can capitalize on industry. And actually, funnily enough, that you were talking about hockey, one of the people we're working with currently as a client, she's she must have come from a hockey background as well, because she now trains, like, main part of her business is training hockey, like field hockey teams, and that's her, and she's trying to get out of that to like broaden her business a little bit, because she's just been so like, she's so niched into training field hockey teams and doing very well doing it, but she's like trying to open doors a little bit, and so it's very interesting that you've come from a hockey background as well. How did you? Is it a sore point? Can I ask? How did you end up going with your hockey?
Got as far as the development squad, and then I just, I've been playing hockey inside out, like season in, season out since I was 10 years old. So I discovered drinking at university and just stopped. Which is a shame. Like, I could look back on that and go, that was one of those moments where I wish I'd persevered a little bit more. But I did come out of retirement and went back to playing hockey this season. So
how'd you go?
It was so much fun. Oh my God, so much fun. And actually, one of the things that I realized when I went back to playing hockey was, it is amazing. This is where fitness began for me. Fitness began on the field, and it was so beautiful to be playing a sport using your body at those extreme levels, like sprinting and tackling and stuff like that, and it's got nothing to do with aesthetics. It's purely about performance. And there was just something about pure joy about being able to go back to letting go of aesthetics and lifting load to actually just sport. So
Yeah. Did you, what was it, what sort of competition did you play in? Was it like an A grade competition, or what
no,
was the,
God, no. I'm
no,
not
okay.
that for
No,
A grade.
I don't
This
know.
42-year-old Brig cannot handle those little 16-year-olds
Yeah.
out on that first grade. No, I was playing third grade, and trust me, that was enough.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
with that.
Well, I mean, okay. Yeah. I mean, because I went back and played football this year for the first time in like 7 years. And, I was like twice the age of our youngest player.
Yeah.
And we were like second division. And, it was tough. It was tough. I had like all these little niggly things, like I kept straining my hamstring, which I've never done in my
Wow.
life. And it was just like a little niggly thing that just kept like coming out. What is, like, it felt almost like a DOMS thing, like, but
Yeah.
it was just, never had it ever in my life. And I'm like, oh man, what is this? This is age creeping up to me, I think. So it's and just like you said, it's good to be back in like that. That's what it was. It was fitness for me. I was always playing sport, and that's, I didn't step foot in a gym until I was, so similar story. Funnily enough, I didn't step foot in a gym until I was 22 or something, and I'd blown my knee out, and in Canada, funnily enough, in Canada snowboarding,
Yeah.
and
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and that was after that came home, and that's the first time I stepped foot in a gym. Like, and I'd played sport my whole life, so and I went back and played after for a bunch of time, but it was really nice to go back now and play again. And I don't know whether I've got another year in me, but well, you're a long time retired, right? So I don't know.
I think one of the bonuses was, the fact that my body was really resilient across the whole season. And even though I was, double the age of everyone, I was definitely the fittest and the strongest out there.
Nice.
And I put that down to just longevity of strength training. And, this is one of the core messages that I have for trainers when working with women, is that the sooner you can get them into strength training, the more beneficial it's going to be to so many parts of their lives. And so I was just really it was just awesome and humbling to go, you know what, actually, this is the truth. I'm a walking billboard for
this
what
works.
This works.
So that's a great springboard there. So let's go into the course you've put together. Tell us a little bit about that. And like you said, you were probably the walking example of it, going back and playing. How long had it been since you played? Just curious.
20 years. No, sorry, 19.
19. That's okay. Nice. Okay. So tell us a bit about your course and what it's about.
It's called the Female Health and Performance course, and I've purposefully chosen those two names, health and performance. Oftentimes, I think when we think about training for women, it's oftentimes just pre or postnatal, or it's wrapped up in aesthetics. And hang on, sorry, just give me 1 second.
No, you're right. That's okay.
So I purposely chose the words health and performance to get across that we're not just, when we're working with women, it shouldn't be just for those special little moments in her life where she's pre or postnatal, or when she's going through menopause. Like, women are deserving of experiencing full health and performance throughout their entire lifetime, throughout their entire span. And so this course really came about through a series of events. I think with a lot of things in the industry, we have to experience health-related stuff ourselves, and we become really interested in that area. Like, if you've ever, done injury to your knee or shoulder, you become super all in with rehab on your knees or your shoulders. And for me, it really began when 2009, I had a massive emotional and physical year. So I went tramping up to base camp of Everest, and on the way up I got like a stomach bug, and as it later turned out, I had a parasite in my stomach that really impacted me. That same year I decided to train for a competition and get on stage and compete, and I did everything wrong when it came to competing. So I relied on excessive exercise and really low calorie diets to get me stage ready, which is not the way to go, but I did it that way anyways. And so, of course, that was going to have a huge impact and some long-term consequences on my reproductive and mental health. And then that same year, I broke up with my live-in boyfriend, and then all of a sudden I was now responsible for, paying the rent in our house, and I was still running my business. So there was just a ton of things or stresses that ordinarily in any other time or circumstance I could have handled quite easily, but the accumulation of all of these things broke me. And I was physically broken. I'd lost my periods due to the low calorie, high energy expenditure of training. I was super stressed, and that kind of gave me a big shock, because here I am, a personal trainer. I'm all about health and fitness, and I can't get out of bed. I don't have a period. I have this horrible relationship with food and exercise.
Yeah.
And so that really was the catalyst that started to get me thinking, well, hang on a minute, guys can do this, and they don't seem to get hammered in the same way that I did. I noticed that for a lot of my female clients who had similar personality types, the A-driven, extremely stressed, had a lot of stuff going on in their lives, were also experiencing similar things. And it just so happened that I was teaching Cert 3 one day, and there was a woman in my class who happened to be a functional GP. Turns out she just lived up the road from me, and we got chatting, and she was like, come in for some consults and we'll start exploring what's going on. And she was the first person to really help me connect the dots between my endocrine system and my performance and my health. And it was through that relationship that I started uncovering a lot of things about women's health specifically.
Yeah.
And she was like, I see so many women who work with personal trainers who have all these little red flags pop up in terms of health markers, that if the trainer understood what these were standing for, that they'd be able to refer them earlier, and their health wouldn't be so affected.
Because I assume it's like a trickle on and a compounding effect. Like my sort of only experience, more knowledge side with this sort of stuff is from like fighting. So MMA fighting, where they're cutting weight. Also gymnastics early on. I was doing gymnastics. My family's been involved in gymnastics. A lot of I suppose they're very young women at that point. It's very common. Like they just get pushed so hard, very, very common, right? That they lose their periods, they lose all that sort of stuff, and it's just accepted almost.
Absolutely.
And like the MMA girls cutting weight and all that same sort of problem. And then they get to a point where like their body just like reacts and they just can't do it anymore. Like
so health is affected, performance and these, athletic performance is impacted. For your everyday woman who's, perhaps a mom, or she's a full-time worker, or she's doing the two, all of those things are impacted as well. And so I started to kind of think about, well, how do we connect these seemingly unconnected parts of lifestyle, such as stress management, sleep quality, nutrition, exercise, mindset? How do we pull them together and in a way that teaches our female clients to understand physiological load and what physiological loading does to their body? And that was really the catalyst and how I started going down that rabbit hole, which then led me to create the Female Health and Performance course. So really it's an all-encompassing course that teaches trainers how to understand the influence that sex hormones have on every single system in the female body, muscular system, skeletal system, through all the different phases and ages of life.
Yeah.
Because we shift, you cannot train a 20-year-old the same way you train a 40-year-old, the same way that you train a 55-year-old. It's not fair, and it's doing women a complete disservice.
Yeah, beautiful. Because from my understanding, obviously each week on the cycle, you have like different loads of like estrogen, different loads of other hormones, obviously that change and vary. So there's a particular, funnily enough, it may have been, I don't know if it was your talk, but it stands out to me where I remember they were going, whoever was speaking at one of the presentations was talking about it, like this is the week that you should be doing strength training because this is the week that this particular hormone is highest, and then after this, it should be more of a, focused on this sort of stuff because they've got different hormones here. It was very interesting, in fact.
If you think about the way that we have science in our industry, it's always typically in days gone by, the subjects that have been used in a lot of sports science studies have always been men.
Yeah.
And they've been typically white. 72 kilos is the average. And the idea has always been, we'll just extrapolate the information that we've gained and we'll kind of just make it fit the female body. Now, obviously, there's a massive difference between a 72-year-old white dude and a 45-kilo young Asian woman.
Yeah.
For example, like you just can't extrapolate that data. And so a lot of the science that we're currently using in the fitness industry is actually based on that science. And now with a lot of new researchers, specifically women in science, coming through and having a vested interest in looking at sex differences, we're seeing some of this old science being challenged. And, the menstrual cycle and learning how to cycle your training around your menstrual cycle is one of the big, I think, coolest things to be coming out in the last 10 years in regards to specificity of training for female clients.
Yeah, wow. Okay, very, very interesting. As I said, I just remember it stands out that one presentation just because it's something that, like you said, completely, like, most women are in the gym and training, and it's something that you should know. Like, as whether you're a male trainer, female trainer, doesn't matter. It's just something that, like a lot of women buy into the health and fitness world. Like I would say there's a lot of female, like when we ran boot camp, it was a female only boot camp,
Of course.
and it's women consume what we sell as trainers a lot. And I think personally, I think they consume it more than males do. So it's something that, what you're putting together is something that all trainers should really be thinking about and be taking part in, just like pre and postnatal stuff, because like that's another thing that's, like you said, very important. But I agree with you that it's not always, like not all women's health is pre and postnatal, and not all women's health is premenopausal or menopausal. Like it's a very cool thing that you've put together that's focusing on people who aren't quite at those other stages, and it's like everybody else. Like so it's very interesting.
I mean, it certainly complements. I think any pre and postnatal will definitely complement my course and vice versa. And I think it's very important that we've got these specific courses that deep dive into pre and post. You need to give that the attention that it deserves. But I'm just all for, hey, let's just teach trainers in general to understand women's bodies more effectively. And I'll share a little story with you, because this is the thing that the battle that I've had, or have some of the challenges that I've had as a result of doing this course. People fall into a couple of camps. Like they're either like, oh my God, yes, this is so needed. I intuitively understand this, but I was never able to put the science to it. So people have already got it, but they just couldn't understand the science. Or on the other camp is this one, which is, well, women already cancel when they get their cycles, so we shouldn't be giving them another excuse or another reason not to train. Or, well, this is just really sexist. Women should just train like men. And both of those attitudes, I think, are also doing women a massive disservice, and we're not helping them. So
that's where I'd love to. Can you dish out on who's giving you that feedback?
This is the kickback. I've had this multiple times from lots of different spaces. Interestingly enough, I'll tread carefully here, the majority of that feedback comes from women themselves.
Really?
Yeah. So it's actually been, a lot of men have been very open to this, especially men who are quite savvy in regards to business, because they understand that the majority of their client base is women. So they're like, duh. I want to know, and I think secretly too, because a lot of guys want to know women code. So,
what was the movie, Mel Gibson? What women want?
What women want. So a lot of the guys that I teach this are just like, oh my God, I now understand my wife.
I get it.
Just saved your marriage. But I think there's a lot of women who have resistance to this, because they think that I think that they think that what I'm saying is that we're less than, that women are less than capable of being fast, fit, strong.
Get their back up a little bit,
yeah. And I'm like, hell no, not at all. We're more than capable of achieving anything in the gym that we set our hearts, minds, and bodies to. However, we are distinctly different from men. So instead of trying to train in the way that a man does, let's just use our own hormones to our advantage to reach our potential. That's what this is coming down to.
Well, and I mean, realistically, it's a similar thing to, like, I suppose, body types. Like when you think about like a ectomorphal, endomorphal, like what one is capable of and what the other is capable of are completely different. I can tell you, I'm not very good at running long distances. I'm way too heavy. But, like then you flip it around and you get someone who's very good at running long distances. They're probably not going to be great at lifting heavier weights. Like it's no different. Like, and that's just a body type thing. Like, that's not disregarding like the whole male female thing. No. And I think if you don't disregard the body type thing, you can't disregard the male female side of things either. So I think it's very important.
I think there's a lot of things that people just don't understand about women's bodies. For obviously we males and women we have a head, we have a skull, we have muscle tissue, we have hearts, lungs, anatomically we're pretty similar.
Yeah.
But then if you start looking at it, we've got little variations. So for example, women's hearts are smaller. So therefore the way that we reach max out or cardiac output is quite different to the way that a man reaches cardiac output. the way we age, our hearts age differently, which has an impact on us in our later years, which is why a lot of women postmenopausal, have the number one killer for women in Australia is actually heart disease and heart attack.
Wow.
Not breast cancer. And just other little things like, for example, muscle fiber types. Generally speaking, women are more type 1 in nature, men are more type 2. So that has an impact on perhaps our fuel utilization, our trainability. It will help determine our sets and rep and volume ranges that we use. So it's just these tiny little subtle differences that have a profound impact.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you said, it's when people disregard some of that stuff. I'm like, oh, that I know that it's not that women can't do that. It's just they're different, and we're different.
Yep.
Like the muscle fiber types is a big one. Like and training different ways. It seems like I just said, similar to someone who's more inclined to be able to run happily long distances, and someone who isn't. Like they're going to get just sore and angry. So it's a very similar thing. Now, I just want to dive in a couple of points for the health and performance course. Do you have, if you're going to talk to someone who you maybe trying to persuade them into the course or give them some advice, do you have a couple of key things or a couple of 3 key takeaways that you cover in the 2 days, or is it much bigger than that? Have you got a couple of little nuggets that you'd be willing to share that would just make people go like, totally. Oh yes, I need this.
Okay, I mean, I think ultimately in the end of the day, you need to understand why you're in it in your business, right? And get smart about who you're serving. Like 80% of most trainers' businesses are women. So it makes sense, these clients inside out. But not only that, I'm pretty sure every single person in this world knows a female, has somebody who's close to them, whether it's their mother, their sister, their lover, their wife, their daughter, whatever.
I would say it's a pretty safe bet to say that everyone knows at least one female.
Yeah, so my kind of comment to that is if you have a woman in your life that you love deeply and care about, then it's in your best interest to do what you can to serve them, because us trainers are at the forefront of this information. We get to help and serve them, otherwise they're just going to go to their favorite Instagram star and get damaged. So that's a bit generic, but so there's that. So that's the business element. But and also according to if I go along the lines of the business element as well, it's like this is just another way of helping you stand out in the sea of same. Right? You get to use this as a selling tool, and I cannot tell you how many guide trainers who I've taught have actually used this to get women across the line in the sales process.
Yeah,
especially when they understand how to listen to them, they're empathetic, they know exactly what questions to ask around the menstrual cycle or their birth, or these specific female-oriented questions that the female's like, what? No one has ever asked me this before.
Yeah.
Man, you must be really switched on and understanding. And third, I think for trainers, we all understand the frustration of trying to help a woman get the results that she wants, yet we're all faced with the challenges of them under eating, thinking more is better, then buying into this whole notion that, sweaty equals effectiveness. Like, we're all trying to do our best to help women to drop some of their stress and manage their sleep. And the clients are struggling to understand the connection between all these different lifestyle factors. And so I teach in the course how you actually get your client to see the significance of all of those things.
Connect the dots.
Right? How to connect the dots and how to encourage them to seek out long-term sustainable results versus 6-week challenges where their metabolisms are broken or they're broken emotionally as a result of that. And then, of course, there's all the science, like the deep science of understanding the effect and the impact of the female sex hormones on the human body is just phenomenal. So, you really get to walk away with an in-depth understanding of what makes women tick and how they show up, and also helps you to understand why some women can get results and why other women can't. And it's not always just about your exercise prescription. In fact, your exercise prescription is probably just a small component of a big picture.
Yeah, I think as the more you're sort of around people and clients, and you learn that very quickly that it's for some people it's such a small part. It's the stress, it's the sleep, it's the diet, it's the
Yep.
It's the general lifestyle. It's like a whole range of different things that go into creating results or happiness or whatever it is that you're looking for. Whether the results are not necessarily, aesthetically driven, but they could be, de-stressing or, like I said, happiness or well-being or whatever it might be. There's a whole range of things that go into it.
Yeah, scientifically, what we're really talking about here is physiological load and somebody's ability or inability to cope with various levels of physiological load.
Yeah, wow.
So when we're looking at physiological load, we're looking at, the stress, the sleep, the general movement, metabolism, and the impact that's having on health. And that all contributes to somebody's ability or inability to get results. And of course, different women are very, it's personal. So individualization and personalization of prescription and lifestyle strategies is the thing for the future.
Yeah.
Like that's where we're at. And, this will help you super personalize all of your strategies to get the best out of your client.
Yeah, out of your individual client. Yeah, that's a very important message. That's a very important message. I agree with that as well. I think as we're moving forward, it's starting to come through a little bit more where people are getting, labs done and this and that done. And it's only going to become more and more that way, and that way becomes the norm, because understanding some of that stuff at a deeper level will help drive the way you train someone. It'll help go, okay, well, this is the sort of style we need to go. This is how much load we need to put in, whether it be twice a week at like a high intensity, or only once a week at a high intensity for this particular person, or whatever way, as opposed to 6 times a week of super high intensity.
Exactly. And at the same time, though, I'm a massive advocate for trainers doing small group training and boot camps as well. So I do teach you how to then take that individualization and apply it to a group setting.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, which is another important thing, because that's always, because we're from a boot camp world, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever I chat to people who are such an individualized product, that's the way I'm always thinking, okay, well, what's the key that how you can unlock this individualized stuff and put it into a group or boot camp setting? That's always something that I'm thinking about. Now, moving on, we'll spin on here a little bit. I wanted to chat as well today about some core specific stuff. With whether or not there's differences with training men and women for core specific stuff, whether it matters, whether it's pre-postnatal or not, whether there's still differences. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, essentially. Like if there are, firstly, if it's different, if they're not, let's say you're not pre or postnatal, let's say just men, women, is it different to start with or not? Okay,
let's start there, because I think it's the easiest place to start. Yes, by the simple fact that we have more holes. We do. Like we have 3 holes.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking at the core from an anatomical perspective, and we use the cylinder as the easiest way to think about this, at the top of the cylinder we have the diaphragm. At the base of the cylinder you have the pelvic floor. At the front, the anterior portion, you've got your TVA and then your superficial abdominal muscles, and then at the back you've got your multifidus and your spinal stabilizers. So those are the sort of the outsides of the core. So yes, men and women have exactly that same anatomy. However, if we've got an extra hole, it just means it's a lot harder to deal with intra-abdominal pressure, or how to manage intra-abdominal pressure.
There you go.
So that fundamentally kind of speaks volumes about why women have a lot more issues with perhaps pelvic floor issues, the inability to turn on or have strong, stable cores is because of that.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's regardless of whether we are pre or post.
Yeah, exactly. Now, okay, interesting.
Now you throw a human into the mix, like a little human that you've been carrying for 9 months, and you give birth to this human. You know, you're trying to squeeze out a massive watermelon through a teeny tiny hole. That's definitely going to have an impact on the structures of the body. And then you've got to add in the hormonal response. For example, women who have increased levels of relaxin during and then post pregnancy for up to a year later, that's going to have an impact on connective tissue and muscle integrity as well. So that's why we have to be super careful and mindful of women in that postnatal period. And I'm not talking just the first 6 weeks after they've given birth. This can go on for years, depending on the individual and whether she did effective rehab or whether she worked with a women's health physio in those initial stages.
Yeah, and I suppose it because we've got a near 5-month-old now, so my wife's been, thank you very much. She's been really good. Like she's not had any real. She's pretty fit going into it, sort of thing, and ended up with an emergency C-section or an unplanned C-section. wasn't a super emergency as such. It was just unplanned. But after the C-section recovery, she's got back into a lot of stuff, not having any issues. And I think everyone can be different, right? You can have someone who, like my wife, who's not had any issues and not really gone out and gone to women's health people and anything like that. And then there's someone else who's maybe going off and trying all that sort of stuff and still having some issues as well. So it's such a hard thing, right?
I think, look, fundamentally speaking, if I was to put some blanket rules in place here, I would suggest that anytime you're working with a woman at all, and she's presenting with any type of red flags that you are, or symptoms that you're finding out in the PARQ or through conversation with her, such as, here's some easy things, do you leak urine when you sneeze or when you jump, when you run or you skip? Do you have to do a just in case pee because you've seen skipping on the board? Do you cross your legs when you cough? Do you just try and squeeze it in there so that it doesn't come out? A lot of those questions, if they say yes, 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 there's automatically a red flag. And I'm like, hey, I really think you need to go and get checked. And even if they had kids 15 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's an indicator that pelvic floor isn't functioning really well. And so that's actually a series of key questions that I ask when I'm doing group classes, and I'm not in charge of the PARQ forms. I'm just getting randoms come into my class that I've never met before. Though I rattle those questions off really quickly every single time, because immediately then I can go, okay, cool, we've got this on the board, we've got box jumps, we've got heavy squats, we've got skipping on the board today. I'm sorry, I don't know your body well enough yet, so I'm going to pull you right back and we're going to do the low impact versions. And they're like, but I've been doing this all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but have you been leaking? Yeah. So no, you're not qualified to meet that demand yet. And so those are just little things that we need to look out for. And if we can, I'd be recommending most women go and check out go to a women's health physio. Even if we are fine, you still don't know what's going on internally. And that's where you need the guidance and the expertise of a women's health physio who can do internal exams. To actually get a really good feel for what's happening internally with the pelvic floor. Yeah, and even if they've had kids a long time ago, those are still things that need to be done. And that's something that I learned from Jen Dugard in the Safe Return to Exercise course as well. Just we as trainers can only see outside. And, if we're watching people's bellies and we're looking to see if they're turning on their transverse, which you can't actually see, if they're telling us that they've got their core on, we still actually can't see that. We have to rely on their feedback. But a lot of times people don't have that mind to muscle connection either, where they can actually say, yeah, no, I'm on. So I think getting that and getting ultrasounds done in real-time ultrasounds, so it teaches women how to actually feel their core working. I agree with some of the I remember the only vague experience I can relate to is when I had my knee done and I had to turn on my my VMO, because that shuts down when your knees when you've done your ACL, right? And they put the little electrodes on it, and you've got to try and fire this one particular muscle, and you can see they put it on your good leg and it just goes like that. They put it on your other leg and you feel like you're doing the exact same thing and it's not doing anything. And you're like, that's strange. That's why is it? That's a great analogy. And you're a trained person.
Yeah.
You have a high level of mind to muscle connection and body awareness, right? And that's also a muscle that you can see. You can physically look at it and go, right? So women can't see their pelvic floor, and a lot of women have the inability to feel their pelvic floor as well, which makes it a little bit tricky.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
So I think if we go back to those two things. Sorry, let me just recap. So number one, yes, there is a difference. Two, if possible, we get women to seek out a women's health physio, and if it's just for one session, and get them to report back. Here's the feedback that she gave me. I'm good to go. Sweet. I'm experiencing a little bit of weakness here. We need to work on this specifically. Sweet.
Yeah. I just wanted to bounce off one thing you said. So pre-exercise screening, would
Yes.
you then, let's say you're running a boot camp, male, female boot camp, or even female boot camp, doesn't matter. You've got your standard questions, your standard 6. I think Fitness Australia has a standard 6 question thing.
Yep.
Would you then go, hey, here are my specific women's based questions?
Yes.
What would those?
So on my PARQ,
be?
I have a specific female section that's added in after the medical clearance part.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but it starts with things like, are you menstruating? If so, how long was your cycle length? Have you ever had an issue with your menstruation in the past, such as missed periods or long time between periods? Do you experience PMS? If so, what do you experience?
Yeah.
So I'm looking to see if they are having physical or physical symptoms like bloating, distended tummies, sore bellies, pain in the lower back, because those are all red flags that I need to know so that I can cater and modify my training prescription. Have you had children? If so, how many, when, what kind of births were they?
Yeah.
Were they natural, C-section? If they were natural, how long were you pushing for? Because those, again, are all information we need to know about the stress on the pelvic floor. And then I go into the questions around the peeing. Like, what experience peeing? Have you ever been told that you've had yada, 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 all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's another like really interesting approach that I don't know whether many people are doing, like that separate or those additional things that aren't just those medical, right? That just aren't, they're not just those, red flag medical, like, you're at risk of a heart attack or whatever it might be, right? It's very specific to everyday life as well.
100%. And here's the thing, our jobs as personal trainers is to be investigators. We need to establish as much information about our client as we possibly can in order for us to make the best decisions around exercise prescription and lifestyle strategy. And if we're missing information, we're guessing.
Yeah. So, all right. So we've got differences, stock standards standing next to each other, differences to start with. If we want to throw in pre-postnatal stuff there, where do we go if as a trainer, are the things we should be going, that's a definite no-go? Or
okay, number one, do a pre-postnatal course.
Yeah.
That's a stock standard.
Yeah.
Gender Guard Safe Return to Exercise is awesome. Get that done. If you're not going to do that, 2, work with a women's health physio who will do internal exams. A 6-week checkup is not enough to qualify them to meet the demands of training. You must do that. Get them there. That physio will guide you with what you can and cannot do. Yeah. Listen to the physio. They are the experts in this space.
I having gone through some of this stuff with my wife recently, I would 100% say that the obstetricians and the people who guide you through some of that stuff have next to no feedback. I won't say next to no knowledge, because they probably have the knowledge, maybe, but I'd say they give you next to no feedback on anything outside, anything in the health and fitness realm at all. It's like baby's done. See you later.
Well, that's their job. That's all they need to do. Yeah. Is the baby out healthily? Are they safe? Are you safe? Thank you very much. Let's move on. Yeah. And that's why we have so many different specialty fields, because we need to fill gaps along the way.
Yeah.
And so the women's health physio really does fill that gap between, where they've left off and where we pick up the slack as trainers. And then it's our job, whilst working with this women's health physio or that relationship, to get our women back to as healthy and as strong and whatever level of performance they want to get back to as quick as they possibly can, in a way that's sustainable and safe to the client, not what we think that they should be achieving. So there's that. And then what was I saying? No, that's kind of where we're at, wasn't it?
Yeah. So basically, that's right. So basically, if someone is pre or postnatal, first things obviously go and do a course and a specific course.
Yes. That's number one.
And I think the, like you said, the pre-exercise screener with those specific questions, it would be probably, I'm guessing, highly up there as number two.
Yeah, so number two is just make sure you're adding all these specific questions. So in my course, I have the PARQ forms all ready to go, and we go through this step by step, looking at what the potential answers are going to be, and then therefore what you as a trainer need to start thinking about. And that's going to help guide you into what your next step is, either referral, or, okay, cool, this person is not a huge red flag, huge red risk, but she's orange. So because I traffic light, I have a system where you get to traffic light the risk of your clients. And so you know exactly where to start them and at what level you need to start both the exercise prescription and their lifestyle strategies. So you're not lost with anything. And this comes back to individualization again. We can't just blanket everybody with the same stuff and go, oh, you've been told you've got a weak core. Oh, look, you know, you've got diastasis recti. Oh, that means it's all bad. We can't do this sort of stuff with you. Well, no, that's definitely not true, right? Some people, like your wife, maybe can start at a really high level and can progress really quickly from there. And I know a lot of women who are very athletic, who within 6 or 9 months have progressed at a really great speed, and they've done it healthily. And yet, I also know athletic women who have struggled with their pregnancy, and it's taken them a really long time, and so expectations for them are very different, and that's 100% okay as well. And then if we take away pre and postnatal, which is an acute time for us to really make sure they're rehab, because here's the thing, right? Having a child, carrying a child, and delivering the child is a traumatic event. You just said you went and got an ACL, Rico, because you tore your ACL. Well, when you're in childbirth, you're opening up your entire pelvis, muscles are being stretched, surgery is occurring if there's any ripping through there. So we need to almost treat this like a huge monumental sports injury. And help women to understand that it's a traumatic sports injury as well that's going to take time to rehab back from.
That's a good analogy, actually, because it is, yes, it's a natural thing and all that sort of stuff, but it is a big event. It's not just
a big event. And also, if you have a C-section, right, well, there's actually cutting through of muscle tissue, then that's also going to be a big event that requires the ample amount of time for rehab. And the compassion to allow women to be okay with taking the time to rehab and not just chasing their pre-baby body. We have to create the space where it's okay for them to take as long as they need. Right? And not pressure them to go really fast or accelerate that process. And then I think as trainers, we also need to be very discerning around core training, because it's like, well, what is core training? I think we need to look at core training in the context of the individual. And as with anything, what is one person's medicine is another person's poison. So what may work for one person may not work for the other person. This is why we have to have, this deep knowledge of who they are, what symptoms they're having, what's their ability, what's their lifestyle like, so then we can start applying the right core training to get the right results for their goals.
And that's an interesting statement as well. I had a chat with on a podcast episode with do you know Dr. Stuart McGill, the back and core sort of guy? Had a chat with him on the podcast a couple of months ago, and we were going through talking about something like a Pallof press with like a band, and you're out there, and he's saying you do that with some clients and it'll tear the hell out of their back and make it flare up. You need to know that for them, they're not ready to do that sort of sheer force. They should be doing, one of his big ones was like something like simple, like a bird dog exercise, or an offset carry. So like carrying one kettlebell in one hand and going for a walk. And he's going, those sort of things, those or side plank as well, are really important to understand the levels of these exercises and where people are at. So that ties very much into what you've just said, basically.
In a similar vein, I do think trainers are also too scared, and we wrap women up in cotton wool. And I've seen many examples of where trainers, their core training has existed of getting people lying supine and just doing lots of breathing work and slow leg releases and stuff like that, which is perfect, it's fine, it's good. But our job is to isolate and integrate. We can't keep people on the floor all the time. because it doesn't meet the demands of, I don't know, life,
Yeah.
unless you're just lying in bed all day long. So when it comes to context and understanding why we're doing core training, we need to figure out what is the demand that is going to be imposed upon this person every single day.
Yeah.
And if you're dealing with a mum who's got a newborn plus toddlers or whatever, I can guarantee you they're not lying flat on their backs all day, every day.
Yeah.
They are lifting unilaterally. They've got a wiggling child in their hand. They are not in perfect postures at all. They're in a lot of imperfect postures a lot of the time, bending, carrying, lifting, doing multiple tasks. And so we need to find ways to match our training to those demands.
And how to progress them appropriately, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Always understanding that we've got to start low and build up and layer up. And that's a skill that I think trainers need to be able to learn really well, and how to adapt or just manipulate, tweak the exercise for that client.
Identify, like identify where's the starting point and going, okay, well, is your starting point here or is your starting point here if this is baseline, right? So like, is your starting point lower than what baseline should be, or is it higher than what baseline should be? And we go from there, you know? So I think that's a really important message with, I think, training in general, but it is, I feel as though it's such a key thing for core training with women specifically, right? I think that's such a important part of it.
And there's one other thing that I'm really focused on when it comes to core training and just health in general is appropriate breathing mechanics. I'm a huge advocate for teaching women specifically how to breathe properly again. You could do all the core training, pelvic floor, TVA work in the entire world, but if you have a faulty breathing mechanism, where you're a top heavy breather, where you're letting your accessory muscles do all the work and you don't get your full inflation of the diaphragm, then your pelvic floor is never, and TVA is never going to be able to function fully, because it's constantly being manipulated by what's happening at the diaphragm level.
With
I think we forget about with the breathing. Yeah,
with the breathing pattern, would that be different to men and women?
No, but anecdotally, what I have seen is a couple of things. So number one, if women have got really large chests and they've moved into quite that kyphotic posture and they've become quite fixed through their thoracic and they can't get good thoracic extension, their breathing mechanics have changed a little bit. So that's one thing always be mindful of is working with women with large breasts, because you're going to have to really look at their posture and see how you can strengthen up that posterior chain. Two, I've noticed with women who are exceptionally stressed, and I've seen this in men, but I've seen it more so in women, they're just constantly using the accessory muscles to lift the rib cage. So their breathing is top heavy versus getting full diaphragmatic breaths. And so they've got this really tight anterior musculature of the neck. They can't take deep inhalations. And that in turn shuts down their ability to function properly in that core section as well. So this is why I'm a big advocate for a lot of mindfulness techniques when it comes to women, starting with breath, helping them to connect between their diaphragm, their bellies, and how to relax through that thoracic area. And then I start integrating like pelvic floor TVA work first into it.
So a lot of breath, like making sure the breath works. And it's so funny because going around, like I've said, to these conventions, all of this stuff is like catching up, like this science is catching up of breath work, of, you know, understanding how important, like we breathe every day, right? Yet how well do we breathe? How well do we know, how well do we breathe is, you know, something that, and how that affects you as well, you know? So breath work, knowing where people are starting, knowing that it's when to progress them, where to progress them through to, I think they're all key takeaways from this sort of part of the conversation. Any last things? I think we've been going for a little while here. Any last things you want to go over, whether it be core, whether it be women's, whether it be the health and performance course? Anything last you want to potentially leave us with?
It's just so hard to convey the importance of working with women in such a short period of time. You know, like I feel like we've just done some broad paint strokes here across women. So just know that there's a lot more to this. We have just covered superficially some of the big rocks of working with women. I think that a big part that we don't often talk about is the coaching of women. And, you know, earlier on you talked about how men coach quite differently to men, men respond differently to different coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, women are the same too. And I'm not saying that all women respond to softly, softly. That's not the case. I'm just saying that when we're working with women, we as trainers have to be very careful of the language that we use, especially, and I know this is going to be quite contentious, but if you are a female personal trainer and you are experiencing any issues with your own body, your own relationship to food and training, you have to check in to make sure that your own biases are not coming out your mouth and into your clients.
Yeah.
And your clients look up to you. So if you've come away from a weekend where you've had some booze or cake or whatever, and you're really restrictive, and you're on a Monday, you go, oh, I just ate all this, so I've just jumped on that treadmill, I just burned it off. You are unintentionally teaching your client, your female clients, to buy into that philosophy. And that's not cool, because that's how we keep these dysfunctional mindsets within the fitness industry. So I'd say that if you're a female trainer, check in with yourself first.
Yeah.
Like, just, are you on check? Are you healthy? How's your relationship with food and exercise and your lifestyle showing up? And be very mindful of the language, therefore, that you are passing on to your client. Other language words to be mindful of are things like good, bad, weak, anything that's quite judgmental in nature. Guess what? Women are really hard on themselves anyways.
Yeah.
Right? We're constantly judging ourselves, you know, we're constantly got these inner critics that are really on fire. So what we as punters or consumers don't need from our trainers is pile on of more judgmental language. What we need, women respond really, really well. We're in a space where we feel supported, where there's empathy, where we feel autonomous. This is a big key to sustainability and longevity of training. The more autonomous somebody can feel, if they feel like they've got high levels of self-belief and their ability to do the thing in the gym or make great decisions for their body, whether that's nutrition, sleep, whatever, they are more likely to stick to the program and therefore get results.
Yeah, well,
so I think I'll just leave that with this.
That's what results are about, right? Results aren't really in those, you know, you get some great results from someone in their first 6 weeks, or their first 12 weeks,
totally.
But that's not
honeymoon period.
Yeah, exactly right. But that's not where the real results happen. The real results happen over a lifetime.
Yep, absolutely. And it's our job to help them find that autonomy.
Yeah, that's a great message.
We
always say, like, if you're trying to make a sale as such, trying to sell a client to your 12-week boot camp, you don't want them just to join you for 12 weeks, but it's a much easier sale than saying, hey, by the way, I want you to do this for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So it's that finding that autonomy is a really good message as well. You know, like having something that they can do every day, or, you know, for the rest of their life, and building that habit of a healthy relationship with themselves, their body, their food, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. I better let you get back to your holiday, enjoying your time there with your family and stuff like that. Thank you for giving up a little bit of your time today.
It's been my pleasure, Travis.
Really appreciate it, and probably look forward to seeing you at Philex, or, you know, whenever the next one is coming around.
Yeah. Yes, I am on. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone found this useful and valuable.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you very much, Nadia.
Bye.
See ya.